Hi, friends. Thank you for joining us on Food for Thought. My name is Sunil Chandy. I am the priest and rector here at Christ Episcopal Church, and this is a program, Food for Thought, a program that comes out of Christ Church, and we thank you for being with us today. Today is a pre-recorded session, and we hope that you like it, and it's a timely session, so because we're going to be talking about the Ukraine crisis a bit and how we handle ourselves through the midst of this global crisis. And so we have, of course, our own Sharon Younkin, who is going to help us and manage this conversation and help us to deal with how all of these feelings that we might have, especially as we might stress about this situation. If you are with us today, tell us that you are with us. Tell us what you like about the program, if you're connecting, if it's something that's meaningful and worthwhile, and we hope that it is. But any comments to improve and do better, that's also welcomed as welcomed also. And so before let's bring Sharon on board. Hi, Sharon. How are you?
I'm Sunil. How are you? How are you?
Oh, yes. I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling a little stressed, of course. I mean, it's a busy time. It's post Ash Wednesday, but engaging in Lent. And then on top of that, we've got all these different controversies in the world. Of course, we're still in the midst of the global pandemic. We're coming out of it. We're considering it more as an endemic experience, but there's also other things around us where, as we navigate through this, now we have this crisis with the Ukraine that is top of mind for many, many different people. And I know news media has really, really engaged in this conflict. And so, how do we handle all of these stresses, the emotional trauma that they present to us as we think about the fears and frustrations?
Yeah, it's a great topic, I think, right? And as you're saying, very timely. And so I think what we're going to talk about today applies to COVID-19 as well, and how we also educate ourselves about COVID-19 and how we interact with the media. So I found a great article on the American Psychological Association website called How to Handle the Trauma of a War from Afar, by Zara Abrams. And so, again, it's a great resource. I encourage folks, if there are events like this, there's also a great article. I'm not going to be talking about this one today, but how to talk to children about the war, because children have a lot of questions about what's going on over there and concerns. But today we're sticking with adults for this portion. So, first of all, in the article, Dr. Garfin talks about how feeling overwhelmed and anxious and sad is to be expected when we hear about this. We see sometimes some of these images in our news feed, and staying informed is important. However, overexposure to media during a crisis, and I want folks to hear this. This was the central message I wanted to get across to everyone today, that overexposure to a crisis is linked with worse mental and physical health, according to an article published in Health Psychology in 2020. And the researchers, I'm going to offer some evidence-based strategies for how to navigate something like this based on research that's been done around this. I remember back after 9/11 happened, I was in grad school, and fortunately, I had a 5-year-old child. So at the time I was very busy, and it was a blessing in disguise. I didn't have time to watch the video clips of the event over and over and over. I saw it once. I had to focus on, getting my schoolwork done, taking care of my family. And I observed that some of my classmates were watching these images over and over, and they seemed to be becoming very upset and dysregulated about it. And it was interesting for me to read that there's actually research to show that after repeated news exposure after 9/11, that folks are at more risk for acute stress, PTSD potentially, and health problems 2 to 3 years later. And they also found this around media coverage around the Boston Marathon, the club shooting in Orlando, the Pulse Club shooting, and COVID-19, the pandemic.
Wow.
So we have to balance being informed, getting enough. Perhaps you don't tune into the 24-hour news programs that have immediate access to the most recent graphic traumatic thing going on. Maybe you tune in once a day. You read what are more comprehensive descriptions or about the story. It's more from a journalism kind of almost documentary kind of style than it is sort of this sensationalism that has really graphic images. Now, it doesn't mean we don't care. I'm not suggesting that at all. But we can do it in a way where we protect ourselves from potentially exposing ourselves to traumatic images. And we can also take action in other ways. You can express your concern not by watching horrors of war over and over repeatedly, but by getting involved in charities or raising money or writing letters, or there are numerous ways that you can reach out and become more involved. In fact, there is, you do have to be careful because sometimes what will appear will be organizations online that are not reputable to help with situations like this. But there is the International Committee of the Red Cross, which is a reputable organization where you can go to their website and you can figure out ways to help that are constructive and that are not sort of contributing to your own potentially physical and mental health struggles.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's really interesting. Yeah, all of those examples that you bring up, the 9/11 situation, the Ukraine situation now, and then of course the all those different situations. They it's interesting when I was when I was going through 9/11 and also through this part, and even through the pandemic, the very beginnings of the pandemic, you're kind of like you watch on TV. You want to be informed. You want to be informed by the newscasters, and the media just kind of like hijacks your feelings in some ways, and so it's information you're not looking for, but then as you find the information, you start to fear, and then the fear moves you into further trying to figure it out, and you get just so distracted by this thing. I would sit in front of the TV for hours watching what the latest news was, and the latest news might have been simply newscaster Joe is interviewing Miss Jane Walk, and she's standing outside of where the World Trade Center was, and we're going to talk to her, and she's sad, and she's sad and she's in tears, and then they move over to the next person, and then they're sad and in tears. I mean, it's not anything new. It just reinforces what we already know,
right?
And it feeds into that anxiety. What are we going to do? How we're going to act? And then the fear, and I think you've told this many times before about maybe taking a step back, to breathe, to kind of look at what's happening here, and to not be hijacked by one's fear.
You're making me think and remember that I went to a conference, it must have been about 10 years ago, it was on trauma. And the presenter there was talking about how throughout the course of history, we've never been, even though we have certainly still war and other atrocities, but we've never overall lived as long as we live now, been ultimately safer, even after 2 years of a pandemic, because things have occurred throughout history where overall, I'd say on average, we're still a lot safer. And yet this was 10 years ago, pre-pandemic, we had the highest levels of anxiety in history. And the presenter was postulating that part of the reason is because of the internet, because we have access to seeing and experiencing every upsetting, traumatic thing around the world. And in some ways it's too much. Where when you think about, as humans, we were meant to kind of be able to process what's in our kind of our area, right? But if we are thinking about, I mean, there is tragedy, there are atrocities, tragedies all over the world that occur, and it can be really overwhelming if you're exposing yourself, constantly to different upsetting images. And again, this is not about not getting involved, but you don't have to. I mean, there are a lot of times I find the folks who are just glued to the TV, upsetting themselves, end up being so overwhelmed they don't do anything except it just seems to be about sort of overwhelming themselves ultimately.
I agree. I think this idea of you know the internet and the media and our constant watching of it makes it seem like the event is closer than it actually is to us.
Yeah.
So I'm watching the crisis in Ukraine, and again, it is not that we're what I'm suggesting is not that this crisis isn't real and isn't a crisis, and it somehow should be glossed over. I'm not suggesting that at all.
Yeah.
But I mean, just the fact that I see it almost every day, every hour, every 20 minutes, and then all of a sudden I feel like I feel almost as if I could say to Putin, "Hey, Putin, stop that! You're not
Right.
stop it now!"
Right.
And the reality is, I don't have access like that.
Yeah.
I don't have access to stop the whole Russian army. But what I can do, so there's like a disconnect. There's like almost a cognizant dissonance.
Dissonance. Yeah.
Yeah, a dissonance, cognitive dissonance, where I believe my actions right here, right now, can somehow affect the whole Russian army from invading, right?
Yeah.
And so that, and then also, and if I can't do anything, what does that say about my own power? What does it say about my fears? What are my anxieties? All of that stuff. So I think part of what I think you're suggesting that I'm hearing is that what is meaningful action?
Yeah.
What is action that actually can produce some concrete, something concrete in my life and in the life around, and then maybe hopefully by circle of influence help the whole larger system.
I mean, this is a larger theme in general about life, right? Essentially, a lot of the struggles that people go through when they're in my office are about accepting what they cannot control and focusing on what they can.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of these events are like that. We accept there are certain things that we cannot control. There is a certain amount of uncertainty, which is anxiety provoking. You allow for those feelings of anxiety. You surf them, you validate them. Yes, this is nerve wracking. There is a war going on the other side of the world. And there's been a long history with that part of the world and anxieties that might come up because of that. And to certainly validate that, allow for those feelings, and then focus on what you can control. You can control how much of it you choose to watch. You can control how you choose to support folks who are going through this humanitarian crisis. You can pray, you can have vigils, you could join a peaceful demonstration. There are lots of contribute to the International Committee of the Red Cross.
Yeah.
Support others, and keep your own part of the world peaceful, your own relationships.
Yeah.
Start in your own house. Is there peace where you are?
That's exactly. I think it's so funny though, because so all of these larger struggles that we watch on the media can become a distracting type of situation where we don't actually confront the very real problems and challenges that we have in our own lives. Like, so, how to, if we're watching TV all this time and we're filled with fears about the Ukrainian struggle. Well, what about the people, the struggles that we have day in and day out? What about the person who has to struggle to find food or clothing or shelter in communities? How do we engage with them?
Yes.
How do we, it's interesting. I was watching Trevor Noah. I
Yes.
think he's really funny, and he pointed something to in the recent coverage by the news media about the Ukraine struggle. It's like all of these newscasters. He's bringing these clips, and all of these newscasters saying they can't believe basically they can't believe that there's violence in Europe, there's violence in the Ukraine, and then they kept saying something like, well, it's really, this is Europe, it's not like the Middle East, it's not like South Africa, it's not like Africa or in other places that you might find this as normal, and so
Right.
you see the subtle sense of racism that's embedded even in the newscasting.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I think the struggle is, how do we live
Yeah.
with global crisis that
Yeah.
are going to happen? What's meaningful action? And I agree with you. I think part of,
Mhm.
for me, meaningful action starts with prayer.
Yes.
It's like, so prayer, acknowledging that I don't have control over all aspects of life in this global community or this universe, and that and then I orient my heart and mind to understand my role in it, and also my role in what is meaningful action. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I
Yeah.
remember, I just one thing. I
Mhm.
remember seeing the YouTube video of Zelensky, and he is talking to, I believe he's courageous, amazingly courageous,
I
and
like him. Yeah.
I really like him too.
Mhm.
And I think like the biggest thing I loved about him, that he was making this YouTube video and he's making this plea to the Russian people and also the Ukrainian people, and you could see that it's almost as if it's a prayer. He's drawing attention, and he's changing my heart, changing my mindset, helping me to see something different.
Yeah.
And then the thing is, what do I do with it? I mean, I can't go out there and bring arms, but I also don't want to stay in my fear. Maybe
Right.
I do the thing that you suggest, which is contribute to the Red Cross or something that'll help people in that area.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I love what you're saying too, just about this whole idea of, yes, being that we have to be aware of the fact that these kinds of challenges happen everywhere.
Yeah,
This is part of the human condition, right? We are all, and I think that's part of, if there's a silver lining that can come out of this cloud, maybe it would be, hey, look, this is what happens when people don't come together. And how can we work in our own parts of the world to be followers of peace, or try to bring peace and try to heal divisions and try to bring people together. Um, and I think that that's, and so, yes. And Zelensky, like you were talking about, am I pronouncing his last name correctly?
Zelensky. I think it's Z. I think it's Z.
Okay. Um, he's one of the few leaders. I think there's only one other leader. Is it? No, the Ukraine has both the prime minister, I'm going to get this wrong, and the president. No. Anyway, he's Jewish. He's Jewish leader,
It's
as
yours.
right, and so, as well as the leader of Israel. So it's interesting to see that whole thing, and how I think he's been a very, very brave man, very
Yeah.
great leader. But yeah, I think this is a lesson to be learned. There are a lot of lessons to be learned with this.
Right. I think he's one of a few Jewish leaders throughout in the world, and so
Yeah.
this is I mean, he has an interesting perspective, and
Mhm.
and he and he's come out of that experience of the I'm not sure how deep is the experience of the Holocaust is, but in Europe, the Holocaust was an amazingly horrid
Yeah,
experience for the Jewish people, and he understands that.
he
And
does.
yeah,
And that's another silver lining maybe to this cloud, is that people are standing up and they're saying, we're not going to let their, Europeans too, like, this is not going to be another Hitler kind of deal.
yeah. Part of my sense is right now, I mean, what I could do is help by contributing some funds to it, helping it myself be oriented, pray through this particular moment, manage my own fears, manage the fears of my community, but
Yes.
help us also direct it to positive action, not only uh, out there in the Ukraine, but also here and within our own communities.
Yes. Yes. I think that, yes, totally. And in order to do all of that too, so in order to do these things, you got to take care of yourself, and you got to, so self-care is also always out there, looking for ways to enjoy life, you have to still figure out how to and deal with what's going on, and also live and move your life forward. And
And breathe, take it, let the fear.
yeah,
The thing about the thing about the media is that it makes it seem like it's imminent, right?
it does. It makes it seem like they're right, it's right around the corner and there's no safety anywhere. And, life's unpredictable. We never know from minute to minute. In some ways, you have to learn how to live mindfully and
Right.
accept that, what do I know to be true in this moment? In this moment, I'm safe. In this moment, things are good, and so you go to a sock hop on Saturday night, like I just did,
Yeah. Yeah.
or you play pickleball, or you do these things that continue to help you to keep balance and perspective,
Yeah.
and
Definitely.
pray and do vigils. And
I think that's exactly it. I think what it is we take a pause, we find the balance, and then we don't let fear overwhelm us so that we move into fight and flight, and then we're able to kind of consciously think about meaningful action and then engage in it. You know, and I think this is what God calls us to do, and I think this is what you've been suggesting all through our conversations about mindfully engaging with life and the world.
yes, yes,
Well, Sharon, I just love just speaking through these type of experiences with you. You always help me to process really well, and I know that God will use even this struggle that we have, this global struggle, to bring about the kingdom of God. Somehow we'll learn through all of this, and then God will get us all to be at a better place.
I yes, I agree with you, Father Sunil.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you, and again, thanks for
For being our fearless leader, for continuing to be our fearless leader through all of this, and helping to keep the ship steady in the storm.
thank you, and I'm looking forward for you to come back here in Rhode Island. Are you still in Florida?
I am, yes. I'll be back in May, and
Good.
so
Good.
yes,
All
right,
right.
right in time for spring, for Mayflowers and Mother's Day and all those great things that I'm looking forward to. Planting my garden.
Yeah, well, I think we're stewing outside my window right now. So you're in a good warm place. So keep it. So when you come, bring the warmth back here, please.
I will. I will. In the meantime, I'll try to send some of it too. I hear you have days here and there that are like 65 even.
Yep.
Yeah. You're like, those days seem long gone.
I don't remember them anytime soon, but I guess they were here.
Yeah. The short visits.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sharon, and I'm looking forward to our next time when we meet.
Yes.
All
Yes.
right.
Take care, Father Sunil.
Bye. Well. Sharon Younkin, again, a wonderful lady and a wonderful thinker who helps us to manage, who helps us to remember how to manage our fears, and even especially the fears that we might get from watching the news and seeing things that are happening on the global scale. Anyway, our time is closing for this program, so let's join together in the prayer that Bishop Thomas Brown of Maine wrote for the pandemic. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Jesus Christ, you traveled through towns and villages, curing every disease and illness. At your command, the sick were made well. Come to our aid now in the midst of the global spread of the coronavirus. Heal those who are sick with the virus. May they regain their strength and health through quality medical care. Heal us from our fear, which prevents nations from working together and neighbors from helping one another. Be present with those in authority who are making hard decisions. Support the medical professionals, emergency responders, counselors, and caregivers. And we ask this all in your name, Jesus. Amen. Join with me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Friends, go in peace to love and serve God. Spread the light of Christ, the light of peace and of joy and of hope to the world around you. The world needs it right now.
Thanks for watching. Did you know that you can join Christ Church from anywhere in the world? If you're feeling connected to what we're doing, email us today at communicate@christchurchwesterly.org.